Welcome back to Savage Rounds with Xavier. This is episode 34. We've got two UFC cards left on the year, ending off next week with UFC 296, Leon Edwards taking on Colby Covington for the 170-pound title. But before all that, next week, this week, we've got what was supposed to be UFC Shanghai. For some reason, it gets moved from Shanghai over to Vegas. Now we're in the Apex. We've got UFC Vegas 83, Song Yadong taking on Chris Gutierrez. It's a bit of a shorter card, smaller card, so the video might be a bit shorter. There's only 11 fights, but regardless, we kick off the night. Rando Santos taking on Talita Alencar. We've seen both girls on Contender Series before. Talita more recently, she ended off, you can see it there. Her last fight was a draw on Contender Series. She just didn't get the contract on the night, but ends up getting the UFC call-up regardless. Rando Santos on the other side. We saw her fight Denise Gomez quite some time ago on Contender Series. Didn't go her way. She has a few more fights down the road. Now we see her here. Dos Santos, though, 28 years old, 14-6, 5'2", 62-inch reach, 4-1 in her last five. It is her debut coming up, and her last fight was a unanimous decision victory over Jillian DeCourcy for the Invicta FC, I believe, strawweight. I can't remember if it was flyweight or strawweight. I'm pretty sure it was strawweight belt. And that was actually, she looked quite good in that 5 rounds. She had to defend takedowns, looked solid on the feet. And Talita on the other side, 33 years old, 4-0-1, 5'1", 58.5-inch reach, really short reach, 4-0-1 in her last 5, with the draw in Contender Series, and that was her last fight, a draw versus Stephanie Luciano on Dana White Contender Series, Season 7, Week 7. She looked really good in the early rounds. Well, I won't even say that, to be fair. She had a good first round. She got the takedown pretty quick. She throws a lot of hard punches. She might not be the most technical striker, but early on she'll throw hard punches, or when it's on the feet, it's pretty much everything she's got into the punches. She ends up getting the takedown, a lot of control time on top. We come around to the second round. She looks exhausted. She's able to end up on top, though. She wins that round, too. Then we get to round 3. I'm obviously still, but looking extremely exhausted. The cardio, not a strong suit for her, it seems. All her fights before that were really early submissions. If you know Talita Alencar, you know her for her jiu-jitsu. Before she transitioned to MMA, she was fantastic at jiu-jitsu, just purely jiu-jitsu. But so we get into that third round with Stephanie Luciano, and she puts the work on Talita Alencar, gets a 10-8 round. We get a draw. And actually, Luciano was the one that got the contract that night, but Alencar ends up fighting first in the UFC anyway. To be honest, this fight could go exactly like that. If Talita Alencar is not able to get takedowns, she's probably going to have a lot of trouble on the feet early. It's a weird fight for me, because if she is able to get top control in those first 2 rounds, maybe she finds a submission, maybe she doesn't. But at the minimum, she will have the first 2 rounds checked off with control time. But if she's not able to get those takedowns, I don't see how she wins this fight at all. Rando Santos herself is a solid grappler. She has more submission victories than any other type of victory. And Talita's got to hold her down to get the win here, or find the submission. On the feet, Rando Santos has her covered very easily. She may not, maybe Talita throws harder and puts more into the shots, but from a technical standpoint, from a diversity standpoint, in the striking arsenal, Rando Santos clears her. So it's kind of a weird one there. I'm going to go, in this fight, I'm going to go with Rando Santos. I think just the well-roundedness of her game bodes very well to winning this fight. I just don't know if Talita's not able to get the takedowns, which she does. And if she does get the takedowns, if she can't finish, I mean, her career could always end up being she wins the first 2 rounds and gets 10-8'd in the end if she's not able to find the submission. So, going with Rando Santos, I think maybe she gets taken down early. There's control time early for Talita Alencar, but I don't think she'll find the finish. I think Rayan is good enough on the ground to avoid that. And then Talita starts to get tired. The takedowns start to get harder, and Rayan's piecing her up on the feet. So, I've got Rando Santos winning this first fight. No bets here from me. Next up, Tatsuro Taira, Carlos Hernandez. Taira, one of the biggest prospects in the UFC right now, in my opinion. One of my favorites also. 23 years old, 14-0, undefeated, 5'7", 70-inch reach. Obviously, undefeated in his last 5. His whole career is undefeated. 4-0 in the UFC. His last fight being a unanimous decision victory over Edgar Chairez in June of this year at UFC 290. Carlos Hernandez on the other side, 30 years old, 9-2, 5'8", 67-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5 with a win on Contender Series, 2-1 in the UFC, and his last fight was a technical decision victory over Dennis Bondar in June, I believe. That was the fight where there ended up being a clash of heads, and the fight gets stopped. Dennis can't continue, but they'd fought enough of the fight to be able to call upon the judges. Carlos Hernandez gets the nod, and now we're here. We've seen Carlos Hernandez struggle with pure grapplers before. Obviously, Alan Nascimento is quite decently well-rounded. His Muay Thai is solid, but his bread and butter is the grappling, the jiu-jitsu. We've seen Carlos Hernandez struggle with those guys. Even Dennis Bondar was taking him down. Didn't have a lot of control time, but was able to get him down. I think he's going to have a lot of trouble here with Tatsuro Taira. We know what Tatsuro is about. His striking and striking defense is continuing to improve. Obviously, it's not the strongest. He can get hit. We saw him get clipped versus Shirez. But other than that, in that fight, it was pretty much all top control time for him, where he was looking for ground and pound, trying to find submissions. I think on the feet, Carlos Hernandez isn't particularly dangerous. His technical boxing is quite good, and he's got fast hands, but definitely not the most power. I don't know if he's going to go out there and knock out Tatsuro Taira. And so with that, Alan Nascimento being able to get him down to the ground and submit him that early, whether it's round 1 or not, I think Tatsuro Taira is able to get Carlos Hernandez down to the ground, whether it's with body locks pushing him up against the fence, or whether he shoots in and gets the takedowns while Hernandez is trying to strike. Regardless, I think Tatsuro gets on top, works the ground and pound, trying to find submissions. Like I said, whether it's in the first round or not, I do think he gets the submission here at some point. Tatsuro Taira's sub is sitting at plus 100, but to be honest, other than that, there's not even any point considering anything else. He's a minus 625 favorite, not worth. His inside the distance line, which I don't think he'd go out there and get a ground and pound finish or a knockout finish, but his inside the distance is minus 140. With his primary path being a submission. If you want to bet Tatsuro Taira, you might as well take the submission line. Obviously, I guess the decision line is there as well if you think he's not going to be able to finish Carlos Hernandez, but I think he gets it done here. Next up, Luana Santos taking on Stephanie Egger at bantamweight. Luana Santos, 23 years old, 6'1", 5'6", 67-inch reach, 4-1 in her last 5, 1-0 in the UFC. Her last fight was her UFC debut, a round 1 KO TKO finish over Juliana Miller. That was in August of this year. Egger on the other side, 35 years old, 8'4", 5'6", 68-inch reach, 3-2 in her last 5 with her last fight being a round 1 submission loss versus Irina Alexieva, and that was all the way back in April of this year, so it's been quite some time since we've seen her fight. And this is an interesting one because I think a lot of people like Luana Santos. I think her big finish kind of stands out in your head, but if you go watch that fight, to be honest, Juliana Miller, I don't rate her highly at all. She's possibly the worst Ultimate Fighter winner there is. She's just not up to the UFC standard. Like, her grappling is okay, but other than that, she's just not up to the UFC standard. But she was landing shots on Luana Santos going forward early in the first round, and that causes a lot of concern in my head. I think if Luana Santos is that hittable, obviously she has big power, because when she was able to start landing on Juliana Miller, the tides completely turned. Juliana Miller got hit with one that kind of wobbled her or stunned her, and it was all downhill for her from there. Luana Santos just kept piling on the big shot. I mean, you can see the significant strike differential, 17, or not differential, even the differential is positive 10.5. You don't see that a lot. It was just one fight, but she was throwing a lot of big power. But it's wild, not super technical. It's a lot of big hooks, trying to find the big knockout finish. Now, who knows if that's just from she clipped Miller, and Miller was throwing like that at her, so that's what she was returning. But with that being said, Stephanie Egger on the other side, she also may not be the most technical striker. Her striking defense may not be up to par, but she's a taller girl for the weight class. I think her length kind of surprises people. When she strikes, it's from really far out, and she jumps in with pretty big powerful shots. She throws a lot into them, but normally she's striking to get to the clinch, or she can push you up against the cage, use the judo to get the takedown, find a body lock takedown, find a trip, get on top. And she's one of the I won't say few, because there are certainly a decent amount of women with a lot of finishing prowess, but she's one of the women in the UFC where, whether she's losing or winning, most of her fights end inside the distance, and you don't get to see that a lot with the women. So She's always an entertaining fight to watch. I think she's gonna feel like the bigger, stronger fighter in this one, and with how wild Luana Santos is, I think Egger's gonna find spots to be able to clinch her and get her up against the cage and take her down. Probably, Egger probably needs a finish here. To be honest, it'll be interesting to see how Santos looks late into a fight if she's throwing that kind of volume. Does she have the pace and the stamina to keep that up? But I'm siding with Stephanie Egger on this one. You can probably tell. I think she's going to be the physically stronger woman in there. I think she'll feel a little bit bigger. Unless she gets hit with a big shot that drops her or rocks her and Luana swarms, I think we see Egger strike to get into range and do a lot of clinch, a lot of work up against the cage, a lot of work on top getting Luana Santos down, and maybe we see the submission. Maybe it drags long, but I think we go with Egger here. The under 2.5 was interesting to me just because of the fact that most of Egger's fights go inside the distance. The under 2.5 sitting at plus 118. That's something I've considered just because how Luana strikes. She definitely could tag Egger with something and put her down. And also, Egger's got the submission game, so she could definitely find the finish on the ground if she gets it there. Egger sub is plus 550. I think the one I'd mainly be looking at is probably that under 2.5, just because the finishing prowess is there. She's available to be finished. So that does interest me a little bit. I'm looking at that. Maybe a small sprinkle on Egger sub, but Egger is the pick for this one. I just think she's going to be the more physically imposing woman, and I think that matters quite a bit in women's MMA. Next up, Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. I'm not going to do a full breakdown for this one again. If you want to see that, go check out last week's video. This was supposed to be last week. The only difference to this week is the fight is at lightweight, which I'll give you a quick overview. My thinking was, obviously Steve Garcia is going to come in. We know how he fights. He swings with big power. His chin's hanging out there. The striking defense isn't great, but he can crack. He was going to come in, try and get Melky out of there early. I think Melquizael Costa is good enough. His movement is good enough. His countering ability is good enough, and he's got a pretty good chin. So unless Steve Garcia put him out early, I think it was going to be a lot of good counters from Melquizael, working the body kick, working the leg kick, because he's got a mean body kick. We saw him work that against Austin Lingo. And then also mix in the grappling as well, because we've seen that hole in Steve Garcia's game be exploited a lot. And while he may not have the best pure wrestling, his jiu-jitsu is pretty good, and I think he does have the ability to get the takedown here in this one. So with all that being said, I like the well-rounded game. The only thing being up a weight class at lightweight, maybe Steve Garcia has a little bit more power, maybe he's a little bit more durable, he can find that big shot. I don't know. I'm still going with Melquizael Costa. He's the pick. More well-rounded, steadier fighter. Yeah, I think he's got a better chin. I think he probably finds the finish in this one, but at lightweight it is interesting to see what Steve Garcia can do. So Melquizael Costa's the pick here, but like I said, if you want to see the full breakdown, go check out last week's predictions and bets video. This fight was supposed to be on there, but ended up getting pulled last minute, so the full breakdown's in that video. Next up, Hyun Sung Park taking on Shannon Ross. Park making his well, I guess technically not his debut, because he won the road to the UFC final, which was on a UFC card. But Park, 28 years old, 8-0, 5'7", 66-inch reach, 5-0, 2 wins in I just said it. Road to the UFC, and he's 1-0 in the UFC if you count the finale, which was on a UFC card, so I guess it does count. Round 3 submission win in that fight, though, versus Sung-Guk Choi to lock up his UFC contract and whatnot, and that was back in February, so we haven't seen him in a bit. Shannon Ross on the other side. I almost said 3 and 4. 34 years old, 13-8, 5'6", 66-inch reach, 1-4 in his last 5 with a loss on Contender Series, and he's 0-2 in the UFC. Not quite sure how he's still around, but he is. His last fight was a round 1 knockout loss versus Jesus Aguilar, and that was in July of this year, UFC 290. That was Jesus Aguilar's first knockout of his career. I don't think he had a ground and pound one before that. I think he had like 2 submissions, no knockouts, and this was his first one. He just throws a big overhand and lights Shannon Ross up. This isn't one that gets me excited, so I can't say I did too much research. If you saw Hyun Sung Park on Road to the Ultimate Fighter, I just mixed up 2 shows. On Road to the UFC, you know the striking is okay. He's definitely hittable. We've seen him get clipped before He reacts to the adversity very well. He's always been able to recover and get the win. Obviously, he won the show, or the competition. And grappling, very good. Submission game, quite solid. Once he gets on top, he's quite aggressive with the ground and pound. He's definitely a finisher. Looks for the submission. And I just think Shannon Ross is going to have a lot of trouble here. When he first came into the UFC, I won't say a lot of people were excited for him, but if you're like deep into MMA, I think people knew he could be decent going forward. When he's feeling himself and like not scared to be knocked out, he's moving forward. He's got a good body kick, decent power in the hands, and like I said, quite aggressive. But he's got to be moving forward. I just don't think with him getting knocked out so much recently that he's not going to be a little bit scared in his head. I think that definitely plays a part. I think Hyun Sung Park, the striking definitely can continue to improve, but I think he's going to be moving forward, throwing shots, getting into takedown range, shooting takedowns, getting on top, looking for the ground and pound. I just think he's going to wear Shannon Ross down and probably find a late finish. Maybe not even late. Maybe he gets it done early. But I just think he's going to overwhelm Shannon Ross with the takedowns. Sometimes on the feet he can get a bit stagnant, so maybe if he's not able to get takedowns and they're kind of standing striking, Shannon Ross is able to get something going. But I don't see that being the case. I think he'll be able to get the takedowns. I think he'll strike to get the takedowns. Hyun Sung Park, sub sitting at plus 200, not a bad line. I just don't really, maybe Shannon Ross's chin is so shot he gets one punch knocked out by Park, but I think if Park does clip him, he probably then, it's not going to be a one punch. He probably would need to swarm and find the TKO. Maybe he does, maybe not. This is not a fight I'm interested in playing. I just wrote down the sub line because if I was, that's kind of probably what I'd think to play, but I'm staying away from this fight. I'm just going to watch Hyun Sung Park and I guess his first real UFC fight off of the road to the UFC show kind of deal. I think he beats Shannon Ross, though, quite soundly. Next up, a very interesting fight here. Song Yadong taking on Kevin Jusay. I was kind of surprised Song Yadong was the underdog, but I guess he's not super favored in the eyes of the public and the bookmakers. A bit undervalued, in my opinion. Song Yadong, though, 33 years old, 20-7, 6 feet tall, 71.5-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5 with a unanimous decision victory over Rolando Bedoya in August of this year. He put on a great performance there, a lot of volume, pressing forward, good aggression. He looked very good in that fight. Kevin Jusay on the other side, 30 years old, 9-2, 6'2", 75-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5, 1-0 in the UFC, and his last fight was a round 1 submission victory over Kiefer Crosby in September of this year. That was his debut in the UFC. And I say this is an interesting one because I think there's a few factors that this fight comes down to. Both guys are quite hittable. Kevin Jusay's striking defense concerns me quite a bit. It is backing up with his chin out and his hands straight out, trying to keep you at range or keep you at distance away from him. I don't think that bodes well against a really good striker, and I think Song Yadong could expose that. But also, Song Yadong has been hurt in quite a few fights. His striking defense it leaves questions to be asked as well, and Kevin Jusay has a very, very good jab. He's good with his range, so that does concern me there. With Kevin Jusay, though, to me, he's not super... there's not a lot of variety. He's not super diverse in his striking. He's got a good jab. He can change that up from a jab to a hook quite well, and he's got a good straight down the pipe. Decent power, very good leg kicks. I will say that to be honest, he goes to all 3 levels quite well with the kicks. But his leg kick is definitely mean. He throws it a lot. Song Yadong on the other side, also quite a good kicker. He goes to all 3 levels quite well as well. Both guys, though, very good leg kicks. Song Yadong, I like his striking a little bit more. I just think he's a bit more diverse, a bit more technical. He goes body to the head, body to open up the head, head to body. There's just a lot of different combinations of strikes, different levels. Both guys are also decent offensive grapplers. I don't think any of them, or either of them, will particularly resort to it, but it would be interesting to see if either one of them decided to mix it in. But I do favor Song Yadong in this one. I just think unless Kevin Jusay can kind of tag Yadong early and put him off of his game, if Song Yadong gets into that flow and Kevin Jusay isn't able to really sting him and keep... the leg kicks are also a question, but my thinking was if he doesn't kind of wobble or tag or daze Song Yadong early and kind of get him off of his game. I think the volume is going to be a big issue for Kevin Doucet with how he defends strikes. I think kind of whoever's pressuring is going to be doing well, and I just think I think Song Yadong has more of an arsenal to push forward and be different, kind of mix things up, keep Doucet guessing. You kind of know what you're getting with Doucet on the feet, in my opinion. I think Song Yadong beats him up here. Maybe gets the finish, but I think a decision is quite likely here, where Doucet is kind of just on the back foot the whole time, trying not to get smoked, and Song Yadong's pressing forward, using the leg kick well, mixing up body to head and just pressing Doucet back. I think that's the big thing. He's got to keep Doucet moving back, but I'm going with the underdog in this one to get the win. I like Song Yadong here. Next up, a very fun middleweight fight. We've got Jun Young Park, the Iron Turtle, taking on Andre Muniz. Park, 32 years old, 17-5, 5'10", 73-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5. All 4 of those were in a row, so he's on a nice 4-fight win streak right now. And the most recent being a round 2 submission victory over Albert Drive in July of this year. Andre Muniz on the other side, 33 years old, 23-6, 6'1", 78-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5. In his last fight was a round 2 KO TKO loss versus Paul Craig also in July of this year, just a week after Park fought, but that was the second loss in a row for Andre Muniz, who's currently on a 2-fight losing streak. And this fight feels kind of like straightforward, easy to explain to me. At least how I see it. Park kind of dictates where this fight is going to take place. I think he's got good enough takedown defense, unless Andre Muniz hits like a really slick trip on him or like a nice body lock or something on him, to where I think Park can keep this fight on the feet, defend the takedowns. And, I mean, obviously Andre Muniz is always going to be improving, getting better in every part of his game, especially the striking, because he's probably what he tries to improve on the most. But I don't think he's got quite the same boxing prowess that Jun Young Park will have on the feet. Jun has very, very slick boxing combinations, decent power, good cardio, good volume on the feet. He likes to press forward, and I just don't know and Park himself is also very well-rounded, a very good grappler, so unless I think Park really takes this fight to the ground and he tries to get some work done on top with ground and pound or control time, which I think would be not the smartest choice here, but I think that would be really the only spot where Muniz can find a submission victory, unless he finds like a really slick trip or a cool body lock toss or something to where he can get on top, or even on the bottom, if Park is being stupid, or if Park shoots a takedown just to try and get Muniz down, he could get caught in something. There's just a lot of volatility in this one, I think. But if Jun Young Park is smart, he keeps this fight on the feet and just boxes Muniz's head off. I think he's going to be able to do that. Muniz, I don't think he'll have the cardio to strike for 3 straight rounds. He'll start to get tired, and I think Park will be able to land the better shots. So Muniz really, really needs to get this one to the ground, in my opinion, and I just don't think he does. His takedown ability. I mean, he's a jiu-jitsu ace. He's got, I don't want to say the equivalent of like Francis Ngannou knockout power in jiu-jitsu, but he is one of the highest level of jiu-jitsu guys in MMA currently. And I just, like I said, unless he gets this fight to the ground, I don't see how he gets this done. So I'm going with Park in this one. No bets for me just because it does feel so volatile, but I do think if Park is smart here, he keeps this on the feet and boxes Muniz's head off to a victory. We've got a short notice replacement here in this fight. Originally, we were supposed to have Alan Nascimento taking on Suma Darji at 125 pounds. Alan Nascimento can't make it to the cage. Tim Elliott jumps in, short notice. The fight gets moved up a weight class to bantamweight. And now we've got Tim Elliott versus Suma Darji at bantamweight. Elliott, 36 years old, 13-1, 5'7", 66-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5, and his last fight was a round 3 submission loss to Muhammad Mokaev not too long ago, just about 2 months ago in October, UFC 294, and actually 2 judges had him up 2-0 going into that 3rd round, so Mokaev doesn't find that submission, and we see Tim Elliott walk out of there with a win against Muhammad Mokaev, which would have been very impressive. Suma Darji, on the other hand, 27 years old, 16-5, 5'8", 72-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5 as well. His last fight was a round 2 submission loss to Matt Schnell. back in July of 2022. So it's been a decent bit of time since we fought him, since we've seen him. And with Sumadarji, he is a sniper through and through. He's got quite good movement on the feet. He is ridiculously fast, and his straight left has a lot of power. That's his main weapon on the feet. He's got a decent arsenal, but what he really goes for is that kind of like darting in straight left down the pipe. Good power on it too, and it's because it's so quick. The timing is great. He generates a lot of power with it. Sometimes it's just timing that could clip a guy. But Tim Elliott, on the other hand, you know what you're getting. The super awkward, herky-jerky movement on the feet, awkward striking to go with it. And then, I mean, you can see in the stats category down towards the bottom, third from the bottom, 3.73 takedowns per 15 minutes. That's not just what he's shooting, that's what he's getting. So a chain wrestler at its finest. Can get into scramble fest sometimes. His top control can be questionable. But, I mean, he looked good against Makayev. I think in this fight, Sumadarji, we've seen him twice before against good grapplers in Matt Schnell and in Louis Smolka. He struggled a lot. The takedowns were quite easy to get, especially after they'd been going for a little bit. Sumadarji's gas tank isn't the best, and I think unless he sits down Tim Elliott with a straight left early and is able to kind of put Tim Elliott off his game, or at the least put Tim Elliott off his game, or kind of rock him and then get the ground and pound finish. I think Mudarji has a lot of trouble in this one. I think Elliott knows he's not going to go out there and win a striking battle with Mudarji, so he's going to go put the pressure on him, be relentless with the takedowns. Once he's on top, work the ground and pound, try and find submissions. And I think if it gets out of the first round, and Tim Elliott has been putting forth that game plan, Mudarji is exhausted going into the second round, and we see more of the same. So yeah, Tim Elliott's the pick here. I think we get a grapple fest for the win. I like Tim Elliott a lot in this spot at minus 133. I don't have any prop lines out or anything yet, so I haven't been able to look at any sort of lines for this fight other than the money line, but I'll probably be putting a unit and a half on Tim Elliott here in this spot. A possible fight of the night contender up next. Nasrat Haqparast taking on Jamie Mullarkey. Haqparast, 28 years old, 15-5, 5'10", 72-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5. And his last fight was a banger versus Landon Quinones, where I'm pretty sure he set his own personal significant strike record, but it was a unanimous decision victory back in September. Jamie Mullarkey, 29 years old, 17-6, 6 feet tall, 74-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5 as well. His last fight, unanimous decision victory over John McDessie on the same card as Haqparast, but not quite the same performance. He did enough to win, but I don't think he looked great. He got tagged a few times by McDessie, even dropped once. And this fight feels pretty straightforward to me. I think Haqparast has great footwork. Striking defense is okay. He can be hit, but I don't really rate Jamie Mullarkey too much. I like the in and out movement he's going to have here, getting in and out of the pocket. Great straight left. His double jab to his left is fantastic. He goes to the body to open up the head very well, and he just works the body well overall in general. Good stiff jab to the body. And with Jamie Mullarkey on the other side, it's a little wild. His chin is hung out there to be hit, and he doesn't have the volume here. I don't know what he does unless on one of those in and out darts from Haqparast, he catches, like I was talking about, Jamie Mullarkey kind of has that sneaky power. Unless he catches Haqparast coming in, like meets him halfway with something big and is able to rock him, kind of put him off his game or find the TKO finish. I just don't see how he wins this. He doesn't have, like I said, the volume to sustain, and that really feels like his one big opportunity is meeting Haqparast halfway and catching him with something big. Because other than that, I think Haqparast is going to control this. I think he's got, to be fair, both guys have decent cardio. They can both go the full 15 minutes throwing throwing steadily for them. But I just think Haqparast is going to put out more volume. I don't think Jamie Mullarkey can win a decision. I think Haqparast can. And I also think Haqparast has the ability to find the knockout here. Jamie Mullarkey gets dropped in nearly every fight he takes part in. Again, we saw it versus John McDessie. Even in a win, he's getting dropped. And we've seen him take the lead in fights like versus Muhammad Naimov and then get dropped to lose or get knocked out to lose. Jalen Turner finished him. His chin is questionable. I think Haqparast has decent power, good volume. I think he outdoes Jamie Mullarkey in every part of this fight unless he gets caught with something big. Haqparast for a pretty easy decision with the volume, or maybe he goes to the body well to open up the head and he finds his big shot that he needs to get the finish. But Haqparast KO sitting at plus 240. If I was taking the shot, it would probably just be at the money line, just because I think the decision victory is quite a standard. Like, it could definitely happen. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Haqparast won by decision or KO here, but Haqparast is definitely the pick in this one. Next up, the co-main event, another short notice replacement here. We were supposed to originally have Khalil Roundtree taking on Azamat Murzakanov. Murzakanov can't make it to the cage. Anthony Smith jumps in on short notice, and the co-main event stays alive. Anthony Smith, 35 years old, 37 and 18, 6'4", 76-inch reach, 3-2 in his last 5. His last fight, a split decision victory over Ryan Spann in Singapore in August. Khalil Roundtree on the other side, 33 years old, 13 and 5, 6'1", 76.5-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5. And his last fight was a round 1 KO/TKO victory over Chris Gutierrez, also in August of this year. And this is a weird one for me because, like, Anthony Smith is a very good fighter. We've seen him do it at the top for years, but I just don't know at this point in his career. He doesn't eat shots the same. I don't know. He doesn't feel like quite the same fighter he used to be, and obviously that happens to all good fighters as they take damage, as they get older. But in my opinion, for Anthony Smith to really win this one, he would need to finish Khalil Roundtree, find him with some big shot, put him down for the club and sub, or just put him out and get a knockout TKO victory, or put on the wrestling shoes and go out there and win. Maybe he finds the submission as well, but my main point there is putting on the wrestling shoes to win with control time. Maybe he finds the submission in doing so, but on the feet, I think he struggles a lot here. Khalil Roundtree, thundering, booming leg kicks, and we know that has been a huge problem for Anthony Smith forever. As long as I can think, he's had trouble with calf kicks. It's just always been a hole in his game. When he gets hit with big shots, he can recover well and still be in the fight, but he doesn't tend to fight quite the same anymore. Like, he's not himself in there. We've seen it happen quite a lot, and when he starts to take a beat down, it feels like it starts to pile on, and it just gets worse. And I think Khalil Roundtree coming forward, kind of stalking him, smoking him with big leg kicks. And they both have this Muay Thai stance, so the leg kicks are going to be there. Anthony Smith does this thing where he, like, walks forward, picking his leg up over and over, trying to time the kicks, but I don't know. The leg kicks are just always an issue for him, so I think we see Roundtree work the legs a lot. He's got big power in his hands. I think super aggressive and, like, mean and vicious with it too, so I think he's coming forward, throwing a lot of big kicks. I think we see Anthony Smith backed up a lot here. And like I said, Anthony Smith, in my opinion, to win this one, I think he would need to put on the wrestling shoes or find, like, a finish in some way or another. But we've never really seen Anthony Smith go out there, put on the wrestling shoes and win a fight via control time like that, purely putting on the wrestling shoes. It doesn't feel like it's a part of his game like that. Obviously, he's a very good offensive grappler, but he's not the best, like, through and through wrestler. So I don't know if he's adding that wrinkle to his game at 35. I don't know if he goes out there and changes up his style completely to get this win. I think he's going to go out there and do what he does, try and find a typical Anthony Smith victory with the striking, and I just don't think that's going to go well for him here. I think Khalil Roundtree, being the physically more imposing guy, maybe he does stuff the takedowns that Anthony Smith goes for, but I think Khalil Roundtree gets this one done. Whether it's by decision and Anthony Smith is taking a beat down, or whether Khalil Roundtree is able to find the finish, I'm not sure, but I think Roundtree gets it done here. Moving forward, big hooks, big vicious shots, lots of leg kicks, good kicks to the body too. He's mean with those. And I think we see Khalil Roundtree kind of take the next step up into the top 10 rankings here and get the victory. So that's my pick. No bets on that one for me. Moving on from the co-main event, we get to the main event. Song Yadong taking on Chris Gutierrez in a bantamweight main event. Song Yadong, 26 years old, 20 wins, 7 losses, a draw, 5'8", 67-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5. His last fight being a round 5 KO/TKO victory over Ricky Simone back in April. And that victory, to be honest, looks quite good. Obviously, Ricky hasn't done anything since then, but I just like that that Song, and obviously this doesn't really pertain to this fight with Ricky being a wrestler, but I just thought it was good that Song was able to go out there and through 5 rounds defend the wrestling, have to fight hard, uh, continue to put out good volume and good offense. His power carried late into the fight, so the stamina is good. It was just a good look for Song in that fight, to be honest. Chris Gutierrez on the other side, 32 years old, 20 wins, 5 losses, 2 draws, 5'9", 67-inch reach, 4-1 in his last 5 as well. His last fight, a unanimous decision victory over Alatang Haley in October of this year. It was supposed to be Montel Jackson, but Montel couldn't make it to the cage. Alatang jumps in on short notice. And it was a good performance for Chris Gutierrez, but as expected in that one. And with this fight, I think Song kind of just has quite a good style to go out there and beat a guy like Chris Gutierrez, who wants to kind of circle around the ring with his back to the cage and throw a lot of kicks. He's got to keep Song away with the kicks. He's got good stuff up the middle. He throws good knees up the middle and good front kicks up the middle. So he's got to do that for sure, but I just don't know if he's good enough with the hands, diverse enough with the hands to keep Song Yadong off of him for long enough. Song Yadong with the boxing, very slick combos, goes to the head well, goes to the body well, to go back up to the head. Again, another guy with great body work overall, mixes it in very well. Fast hands, good power, likes to move forward, be aggressive. The one thing I could see being an issue for Song here, though, is he can be, with the boxing style, he can be quite heavy on that front leg. If Chris Gutierrez is able to work it early and start causing problems early before he starts taking a lot of damage, I could see the leg kick being a path to victory. And obviously we've seen Chris Gutierrez do it before multiple times, so it is definitely something that is a part of his arsenal and his skill set. To be honest, it's probably what he's most known for, definitely what he's most known for is the leg kicks, but the leg kick finishes as well. And other than that, I don't really feel scared for Song in this one. I think he can go out, and unless Chris Gutierrez is able to hurt him with something up the middle as he's coming forward with a big knee or like a big front kick or something, maybe like a sneaky head kick while Song Yadong is coming in. I don't know if he's got the ability with the hands to keep Song off of him. Song's going to come forward, throw those combinations, rip to the body, rip to the head, and I think as the fight goes on, he'll start to land more and more. We'll see Gutierrez start to take more damage. I could definitely see a late finish here for Song Yadong. But yeah, Chris Gutierrez, in my opinion, has to get the leg kicks going early. He has to make the investment in the leg kicks early worth it, or else later in the fight, he's going to be having a lot of troubles, in my opinion. I think Song Yadong gets this one. I don't think the leg kicks come into play as heavy as Gutierrez will need them to. And Song Yadong starts to just build damage over the first 3 rounds, and we get into like late 3 and 4, and we could start to see a finish for Song, in my opinion. Song could also just catch him with something big. He's got great power, but building up the damage and maybe finding a finish late 3, 4, 5 is kind of how I see it playing out in my head. But yeah, Song for the victory here. Savage rounds parlay. We missed last week. We hit the first week in December, so we've got to go. Or I guess there's only 3 cards in December, I guess, now thinking about it. For some reason, I thought there was 4, but 3. We've got to go 2 for 3. We missed last week. So I'm going Tim Elliott. I love him in the spot against Sumadarji. Like I said, Sumadarji's biggest holes are where Tim Elliott is the best. Tim Elliott's going to go out there, be relentless with the grappling, have a lot of control time, look for damage on top, continue to press him up against the cage. Sumadarji's going to run out of gas. His grappling just isn't the best in general. And I think we see Tim Elliott either grind out a decision, maybe find a late stoppage with Sumadarji being exhausted, and then I just broke the whole Song Yadong one down. Unless Chris Gutierrez invests in the leg kicks early and it pays off, I think he's going to have a lot of trouble here keeping Song off of him. Song's going to come forward, rip to the head, rip to the body, continue to build damage over those first 3 rounds, and maybe we see a late finish. Maybe he's able to just win a decision, but I like this parlay. I feel pretty good about this when we get plus 123. With a win here, we'd be at 3.7, and then we could try and make it to over 5 units with the last card of the year. That would be, I think, decent for my first year tracking the Savage rounds probably, but next year, I've definitely got to clean it up because there were some really good streaks and some really bad streaks too. So first year, though, we'll see at the end because we've still got 2 more cards. So it could go bad, but I think it'll go good. I like this one a lot. And yeah, that's UFC Vegas 83. We've got to hit this Savage rounds parlay, finish off the year strong with 2 cards left, And I will see you guys Monday or Tuesday for the recap. Then we'll do some matchmaking. Drop a like and subscribe. Peace.